Today is going to run in some juicy training for you guys, something that we have taught and also seen working out very well with a lot of our advisors, basically. And so today is going to be on the topic of follow-ups. Okay, today is going to be a topic of follow-ups, right? Something that people hate and or rather dread, but yet at the same time, it's the one that's going to earn them like way more money than most people, right? And so before I go into my iPad, I'm going to draw out and then do the trading on this. Let me just say that like a lot of times, when it comes to the sales process, we just kind of like, okay, you know what? It's the way we think about sales is like very linear, right? And so what tends to happen is always about, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna go for the prospect, get opening, and then go for the closing, right? And then if the closing doesn't, let's say it's pending, and then all we get is, okay, let us know by tomorrow, right? Let us know by next week, something like that, right? And all their stuff. And then if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't, right? And so that seems to be kind of like the route that most people do, which isn't really like the best. And I'll explain why in a bit. But all I can say here is this, right? All I can say here is that whether is it in this coaching business right now, or even with our advisors, or even when I was an advisor like in the past, I can literally tell you that follow-ups are like the closest thing that will, or what you call like lowest hanging fruit to actually getting more sales, right? If you do it the right way. Like if you do it the right way. I repeat, like follow-ups are basically like the closest thing you can ever get to getting a sale if you do it the right way, right? And so what happens here is that, let me tell a story. And so what happens was that, I had when I first started out as an advisor, I was, literally doing my prospecting, doing my closing, and everything else. And so, and so what happened was that, there was a few people that told me and said, you know what, Ben, like, it's okay, not now, and because I was like a student advisor, so I have a ton of people who are students, obviously. And, they always say it's a budget issue. They'll say that, you know what, let me think about it. I need to speak to my mom, my dad, whatever, right? And yeah, understand, I wasn't that great at sales yet. I wasn't that great because I was just starting out. I probably like 4 or 5 months in the business. I wasn't that great. And so, but what I knew inherently was that I just know that I just needed to keep the temperature and relationship warm with them. And then, eventually they'll come in, right? And so there was this case study where this friend just literally tell me the objection basically I gotten was like, hey man, I don't have enough money right now. I think this is a bit expensive. And for context, I was just like, I think it was a I think it was a small term plan, right? I think it was a shoe at term plan. I think the term plan was about like maybe $800 a year, kind of stuff, right? And obviously, if breaking the monthly is not really a lot of money, but being 22, 23, people say that money issues, right? Whatever. And so what happened was that like for 4.5 months later, what happened was that this same, and so obviously he's a friend, and so obviously we kept the relationship normal, obviously, without, even though like we didn't close in that sense, right? But what happened was that about 4.5 months later, right, he actually reached out to me, and it was just like we were just having dinner, we just have coffee and everything else and chills. And after that, he was just like, hey, he was just like, hey, Ben, by the way, like by the way me, right? He was like, hey, Ben, by the way, remember the last time you talk about the term plan? Yeah, actually, you know what? I think we can go ahead with that. I want to get that. Now I'm like, so in like, I was literally surprised, right? And so I was thinking to myself, like, okay, and I literally asked him, I said, "Hey, so bro, what made you change your mind? What changed?" And he looked at me, right? And he was like a bit sheepish. He was a bit like, don't know how to say it. I mean, he knows what's the reason, but he just don't know how to say it. And so he gave a bit of, kind of like look. And I just look at him and I say, bro, it's okay. Just tell me. I mean, like, what's the real reason? And then he was like, bro, Ben, I mean, I don't mind me saying this. I feel a bit pricey, but last time when you reach out and you did everything, I mean, all of it actually makes sense. But I don't know if you're going to leave the industry. I don't know. Maybe at the point I can't really trust. I trust you, but I don't really trust your expertise yet, kind of stuff, but after a few, the last few months, like you still maintain a relationship and you still catch up with me and everything else. You actually care for me by helping me some other stuff. I'm actually okay with it and I kind of trust you a lot more, right? And so what's the lesson, right, from this story, before you go to training? The lesson here is that sometimes when people give you objections, like sometimes you can do the presentation, the opening and closing perfectly well, but there will always be factors that are external that you and I cannot control, right? And maybe maybe in this case, it's like this person feels like it's a vibe thing, right? Maybe this person got trust issues with my expertise, which is granted, right? I was just new and everything else. But my point here is that sometimes people give you objections that might not be the real concern, right? It might not be a price thing, because I can tell you one thing for sure: 4.5 months ago and 4.5 months later, he didn't have that much money. Like, I mean, he didn't take a part-time job. It's not as if he inherited something, or like he start, like doing some side hustle. He didn't. He just remained the same. I know, because I was studying him every other day, right? And so what really happened was that the relationship grew more, and then he just like, let's go ahead with it, right? And so sometimes, like with the follow-up, like the way you look at follow-ups, is like sometimes people think that sales is just about, okay, let me get it close, close, close. If cannot, then yeah, gone, right? And then we take the objections so seriously at face value. Oh, let me think about it, or like whatever. To the extent that we think that like we can't help, or we can't do it, right? Or we can't basically close at the end of the day. But I can tell that it's usually just a relationship or temperature thing. And that's really what follow-ups is all about, right? And there's follow-ups with a bit of what we call like valuationship, like nurture. Like, you have to just nurture them along the way as well. And that's where you get way more money, right? And that's basically what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so hopefully that story, maybe some of you listening to this right now, like this, whether you're live here or like watching the recording, some of you might have faced this before, right? Which is during end up closing, and then a couple months later you check in, and then, oh no, they are good with it, right? You could be 6 months later, whatever, right? And it just starts to still keep it. You know what I mean? So it's actually follow-up processes. Like, follow-up is actually very important, just that most people don't know how to do it. And that's what we're going to cover today. Okay, so let's talk about it now. Let me pull up my notes, and so that we can have a great one. Okay, so let's talk about the first thing, right? So whole point, it's follow-ups, right? Let's talk about like follow-ups, right? The first thing, or today, especially we talk about topic of follow-ups, we have to first ask ourselves, like, why do we follow up with people, right? Why do we like nurture them, so on and so forth? Very simple, right? And let me draw the sales process. So typically speaking, there's always, there's let me just say, there's the prospecting phase, right? And then obviously before you prospect, there's always what we call, you obviously have leads, right? And the leads, could be existing, meaning to say that the leads are either your clients already, they are your warm, or they are cold, right? That's typically like the three categories you can ever get leads. And so you get the leads, you prospect them, and this is like usually engagement, right? And so engagement could be, if you see the previous videos, if you guys haven't, I talk about engagement, which is either like you talk to them, and then obviously there's the catch up or the value side of things. And then of course, catch up a little bit like here and there, so on and so forth, right? So there's the leads, there's the prospecting, that's the usual what most people do. And then after that, you go into the next part, which is obviously the opening appointment. And then obviously opening goes to closing. Now, of course, you can do opening and closing in the same appointment, or closing and opening in a different one, doesn't matter as much. And it's not a topic for today, but it's usually opening and closing, right? And when you close, or after closing, there's only two outcomes, right? Either you close and then they become your client, or you no close, right? And so no close, then usually what you want to do, then this is where you do follow-ups, right? And then follow-ups, and then we have another stage which I'll talk about later. It's called like nurturing, right? And follow-ups and nurturing is not necessarily the same thing. There are nuances to that. But, for the purpose of today's training, we're talking about follow-ups, and nurturing is always the same thing, okay? But maybe I'll dive into that like moving forward in future trainings. So here, look at this, right? And let's talk about math first. So if you have, okay, so here's always the thing, right? You always have more leads than prospects, right? Follow me on this equation. You always have more leads than prospects. You always have more opening appointments than closing. I mean, duh, right? Unless your closing is 100%, then even then your closing can never be more than openings, right? It's maybe even if you close 100%, it should be the same. And so you always have more opening and closings. And what this means is that, relatively speaking, you will also have more closing appointments than the ones that you close. And so if you have 10 closing appointments, even if you close 7, you still have 3 that you don't close, right? And so basically you always have, this number will always be more than your closing, right? And so the whole point is that we want to start looking at how do we stop this leaky bucket, right? And so, because like I mentioned just now, if your closing is your opening process and your closing process is so great, even if you handle all kinds of objections, you pre-frame them, you set a frame, whatever, there'll always be things that's uncontrollable, right? And so the thing is that how can we basically get them from a no close to a close again? That's the whole point of follow-ups, right? Like literally that's the whole point, right? We didn't close in the past. How we get them to close right now? How we get them to buy, right? And so why I would say this is like super important is because, let me just write this down here. Because number one, right? the main thing, actually, the main thing, right, is that it gets you, it's the closer thing to the sales. Closest to the sale, let's say, closest to the sale. Right? Why do I say this? Very simple. So if you look at this, right, you have leads, you have prospects, you have opening, and then we have closing, right? And then there's the close. And so those who have no close, right, if you think about the process, like where do you think is the nearest to the closing? You see, if you have a new lead again, what's going to happen is that you need to prospect them, you need to do opening, then you need to do closing, and then you try to follow up, right? It's a few steps away. Now, if you think about people who you didn't close, they have actually walked through the steps, right? And so let's say they already walked through the steps, and so it's essentially they are closer to the sale, right? And so if you remember about the warm market training I did in the last, I think, business hour episode 2, right? Remember that there's the hot market, there's like warm, and then there's like semi-warm. And then of course, anything outside is obviously cold, right? And so what tends to happen, what we are really trying to do is that we are trying to get, if people who are usually your warmest or hottest in terms of temperature or relationship with you, what tends to happen is that, they usually buy a lot easier because they trust you a lot more. And so it's the same thing, right? These are the people that's closest to you in terms of getting a sale. And that's why people do Project 100. In the same vein over here, this is the same vein, right? Like follow-ups are technically the closest to the sale, if that makes sense, right? And so that's not a big idea, right? Okay, so now it's closer to the sale, and therefore you really want to go with these people. I also mentioned that, a lot of times when you didn't close, or let me tell you one more thing, like why you want to do follow-ups, right? First, it's closer to the sale. Number two, right, is that it removes pressure from trying to hard close someone, basically, right? Because you think about it, a lot of times when we tend to, or unintentionally, or even see other advisors be a little bit more pushy or a little bit more like caught up with the outcome of the sale when they're trying to sell, it's also because of the very fact that they don't have a very good process on how to get them back on the call again or get back to another appointment if they didn't close, right? Because if you knew that even if you don't close today, you know that based on the follow-up process, you can get in 3 months' time or 2 weeks' time, right? You can get this person on a call and you have a higher chance to close again, right? You wouldn't be so hard on, oh, I want you to make a decision now, right? If not, if you don't make a decision, they are pussy, right? You don't have to do that, nor we have to go that route. And so, obviously, you still want to close during the sales process, right? All I'm saying here is that if you can't and they're really not comfortable or they have certain reasons or reservations of why they don't want to close or why they don't want to buy, then at least you have a follow-up process. Makes sense? You have a follow-up process that will lead you up to the closing. Makes sense? And so if I were to bring up like the reasons, so first of all, follow-ups means that they're closest to sale, which means to say that these are the lowest hanging fruit. They're hotter as compared to someone who's a new lead. Second is that it removes pressure from trying to cut close. It removes pressure, right? And just for context, we literally in AS, right, we literally have advisors that we actually hop on a call like a year later. You wouldn't believe it. I think more than like 30% of our clients in basically in our Blue Belt or like a higher tier programs, right? It's like more than 30% of them, about 30% of them at the very least, right? Are follow-up. I came from follow-ups. Meaning to say, right, that either they took a year, some could be like after 4 months later, so on and so forth. The longest one I had was I had this friend of mine. I wouldn't. It's called friend. He's a friend now because like backstory, right? And so what happened was that he's from Phoenix at the point in time. I don't know, mention his name, but he's from Phoenix at the point in time. I started the coaching business. I met him once, right? I didn't close, and this guy's solid, right? He does MDRT 2 rounds. He's a solid A student kind of like individual. And so I met him first time, first year, nothing happened. Second year, met again, right? Like we just caught our IG and then we just had a call again. And I get fed up, just nothing happened. Third year, nothing happened. Until the fourth year, right? Which is at this time of recording, beginning of this year, right? He reached out and then like he came in with us, right? And he came in working very closely with me on a one-to-one, and this is the highest tier, right? And so what's my point? Right? It took 4 years. Guys, like it took 4 freaking years to have someone who joined our highest tier, right? And my point is, as long as you, and the thing is, the reason why I was able to have an appointment or rather a session with him every year was because the way I do the appointments wasn't like, oh, it's either you buy or if not, we don't talk again kind. Like you kind of burn the bridge. Like you don't want to do that, right? You just want to have that relationship. You don't have to talk to this person every day, but like, you just need to keep in touch, so on and so forth, and then it comes in. That makes sense? And so that's the reason why like follow-ups are so important, right? And so that's kind of the idea, right? So that's why you want to follow up, which is close to the sale, remove pressure from trying to close. And one more great reason why you want to do follow-ups is because you actually get more money without buying more leads. You actually earn more money without buying more leads, right? And let me explain this a little bit before I run through kind of like the process of like how we do the follow-ups and like what you can do for your own business as well, right? Okay, so actually earn more money without having to buy more leads, right? You basically get more sales, more production without trying to find more leads, right? And so this is what I call like basically the advisor rat race, the advisor's rat race, right? And what do I mean by that? Very simple. So if you think about like people, see, so there's leads that we mentioned just now, right? There's like prospecting, meaning say like how to get them to meet you, and then basically there's opening, and then there's closing, right? And then there's follow-ups, which leads back to closing. And so what happens is, okay, a lot of times, and this is, like literally for the record, I spoke to more than 2,000 individual advisors and agency leaders. And so obviously it's far more than that, like different countries, Brunei, Hong Kong, everything else, right? And what you realized, right, was that most people don't really have a leads issue. Like they don't really have a leads issue, right? And the reason for that is because for those who have warm or know how to do warm, they don't have a leads issue because everybody has some form of warm, right? For those who literally don't have warm market at all, they will kind of like go and buy these, which is something that is very much available in the market, right? Every digital marketer, every up and young and up and rising kind of like young folk, trying to earn some money, they will just do a social media agency or marketing agency, right? And they sell you leads, right? And so generally speaking, leads is never an issue. Like leads is never an issue because either you already have it or you don't have it and you buy. So this is actually the simplest thing. If you think about it, having leads or not having leads, right? It's like leads is really the simplest problem that you can solve, right? Because you can either buy it because everybody is supplying it, or number two, you already have it, you just need to know how to prospect it, right? And so where the problem usually happens is usually in what happens after the lead, which is usually they don't know how to convert, meaning to say you have the lead, but you don't know how to call / text / approach them into an opening appointment, right? That's the first thing. And then opening, you don't know how to open well, you don't know how to fact find, how to do a concept, blah, 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 blah. It's another problem, right? And then guess what? You don't know how to close. Maybe you don't really know how to pitch. Maybe your objection handling is weak, yada, yada, right? And then, because even if you have the best sales process, there are external factors that we cannot control. And guess what? You don't know how to follow up. And so what tends to happen, right, is that the problems lies in all these orange color thingy that I just highlighted. Like the problem 5 with this, right? And so imagine this, right? Imagine a world where you have 100 leads every day. But then you're closing and 100 leads, right? And then let's say you manage to get like 20 appointments. Okay, let's say 20 appointments. Okay. And out of these 20 appointments, you end up, right, only closing, I don't know, there's 2. You end up only closing 2. And so what tends to happen is what? You have basically a 10% conversion rate or closing rate. Right? It's 10%. So most people, their mindset is, you know what? I have a 10% closing rate, I can't close as much. So therefore, I need more leads. Which makes sense, you know why? Because of your conversion is low, that's why you need more leads. Can you see? And so this is why I call the advisor's rat race. Like your conversion is low, that's why you need more leads. If your conversion, for example, is 40%, which is a 4x increase, right? Then you probably wouldn't need more leads. Make sense? Right? You do need it, but that wouldn't be your constraint or the biggest problem that you want to focus on, right? If you focus on the rest of the things. And so what tends to happen, right, is that people try to blame it on the lack of leads, when in fact their own skill sets are just not good enough to get them the sale, right? And so this is the most vicious cycle that anyone can be in. Because if you think that the problem is always with leads and everything else, and then even after you get a leads from marketing agency, and then you say the leads quality are bad, and what's going to happen is that you're never ever focusing on the real constraint that's going to help you get more sales. Make sense? Right? And so that's kind of like the big idea or advisor's rat race. So what I'm going to do is basically, these are hopefully give you enough reasons why you want to focus on follow-up, right? And so let's talk about like how to follow up, right? And so what I'm going to do is going to share with you kind of like at least a rough idea of the process of what I've seen advisors been doing, like kind of like key top things, kind of the process, and then, hopefully you can use it for yourself, okay? So let me just take a sip of water. Okay, so let's go into it. So first thing, right? So let me just put here process. Number one, first thing when it comes to like follow-ups, for example, is that first thing, let me just like try to write this down. Okay, cool. First thing is you always want to make sure that you must always set an appointment after every appointment, right? Process for FU, follow-ups, okay, follow-ups, okay. So you must always set an appointment every time you finish an appointment. And this is one of the most simplest, fundamental, easy money-making tips to bring your business to the next level, which is to always set an appointment after the one during the same appointment after the end, right? And so when it comes to follow-up, let me just explain this a bit more. And so, like you mentioned, let's say you do a 2 appointment close, typically speaking, right? You have an opening where you do all your fact find, right? Fact find, you do concepts, you do maybe a soft proposal, kind of like share with them, like generally how it's like. And then after that, you do a closing where usually you will go back to do the proposal, for example. You recommend a proposal, go through the fund fact sheet or whatever if you're selling investments, and then of course you go through application and then you will close, right? So here's what most people do. They go for the opening, they go for the closing, and if they do not close, what they'll do is usually, what they'll do, right, is they will usually say, let me know by a date, right? And it's usually through text, right? And so it's okay, you know what? I understand you need to think about it, yada yada, sure, no problem. Then you try to handle objection, what do you think about that kind of stuff? And then after that, you dive into basically saying, oh, you know what, is okay, cool, you need to talk to your wife. Okay, great. So when are you speaking to your wife? Oh, this Saturday. Okay, great. Maybe let me know by next Monday. Like, take some time to think about it and let me know by next Monday. You good with that before 3 p.m.? And then they're like, sure, yeah, I'll let you know. And then what's going to happen is that when Monday comes, they don't reply, right? They don't reply. And what's going to happen? You're going to text them, hey, Mr. Prospect, have you made a decision yet? Right? Oh, it's 10 a.m. already. Like made a decision yet, whatever. Then what's going to happen, right, is that they're going to be what? They're going to ghost you. We all know that, right? Like, by the deadline, they usually don't reply. And you need to follow up, right? Then you bump them again. Hey, is everything okay? Have you decided? Then this is the usual lame ass follow-up process, right? Now I'm not saying those don't work. I just say it's not the most effective that we've seen so far, right? And even if they do reply from a prospect standpoint, even if they do reply on Monday, it's either hey, have not made a decision yet, or hey, we will not proceed for now. Thank you very much. It's usually the case, right? It happens so many times. And so this is not really, or rather, I give you another one, right? Sometimes even on Monday, let's say, same case study, Monday they reply you. What would tend to happen is that they might have some questions. Like they are actually interested, like they're actually genuine, but they have some questions, right? And so if I lay out the usual process, right? Okay, let me know. And then this is either they no reply you, they reply, yeah, so it's a no reply or they reply no, right? And then after that, they might have questions, right, that you need to answer, okay? And that's kind of typically how it works like, right? And so, or rather, I give you the ideal situation that everybody in their head always think that they have or they want, right? Which is essentially, they say yes, right? Everybody wants this. Everybody wants on Monday morning when a prospect is going to get back to me, they're going to say yes. And then every advisor is just going to be like anticipating that day and a time and just to get your balloon getting popped, right? And so everybody's thinking of yes. But most likely is usually the rest of the answers, right? If you look at probability, like you're not going to get a good rate of that, right? And so that's really what tends to happen. And so what you want to do, right, is that at the end of the closing appointment, and then what you want to do is, or at least something that we propose doing, that we have seen in our advisors that work, is you set another appointment, right? And if you can call it whatever appointment you want, in our case, you can call it FE appointment, right? Like a follow-up appointment. And so you're going to set a follow-up appointment. And what you want to do in the follow-up appointment is handle objections, Q&A, basically answer their questions, because they might be really, they might really be like wanting to do it already, but they just need some reassurance, right? And so there's Q&A, right? And then the last one, believe it or not, it's to end things off on a good note. End things off on a good note, right? And so essentially the whole point of the follow-up appointment, right, is to help them make an informed decision, right? Help them make an informed decision. And here's a caveat here, okay? And this is the thing that most people can't get over, but this is sales at the end of the day. The whole point of sales, and follow-up is part of the sales process. The whole point of sales process of follow-ups and everything else, right, is to help them make an informed decision. And that decision could be to buy or not buy. Right? It could be to buy or not buy. And that's the thing, like most people cannot accept the very fact that, oh, people cannot buy. Like every time we want to follow up, we are like trying to close, and we think that's the objective of sales. It isn't. Right? The objective of sales, we want to highlight it for everybody here. The objective of sales is to help them make an informed decision, and that decision could be to help them to buy, or help them to make a decision on not to buy. And it doesn't matter as long as it is an informed decision. The thing here is this, right? What I've observed is that even like me doing sales, like I've done like multiple millions of sales, right? We are actually okay with people saying no to us, as long as it's a very informed decision, or a decision that they made knowing all the facts, knowing all the perspective that's going to help them make the decision, and then they still say no, right? I think we are fine. Does that make sense? Right? And so what we do not want is that our prospect says no, but then it's not an informed decision. They didn't think about it, they didn't consider certain things, yada yada, and just say no for the sake of saying no. Those are the things that we cannot get over, right? And so my point is that you need to understand sales at the end of the day, whether is it the follow-ups or not, is to help them to make an informed decision to buy or not buy. Okay? And that's really the most important frame you can have. And why I'm saying this, right, is because that's the most important frame that you need to have, right, when you're setting the third appointment, right, or the follow-up appointment in that sense, right? Because if your objective is trying to close someone, what will tend to happen is that they can sense it and they will not want to have that appointment with you. Make sense? Right? And so that's the whole point, right? And the reason, again, why you want to set this golden third appointment, right? Because if you think about it, if you want to handle objections, my question is very simple. You want to handle objections through a conversation, through an appointment like this, like live setting, whether it's Zoom or whether is it in person, right? It doesn't matter, right? You rather have that, or will you rather like through text? Will you rather handle objection through text or handle objection through a face-to-face / Zoom? Obviously, it's going to be like the winner will definitely be face-to-face or through Zoom. Make sense? Yeah, it's for sure. Because we all tried before, right? They ask you a question, or they say your premiums are expensive, or they tell you that, hey, the investment plan fees are pretty X. Then what's going to happen? You're going to be like, send a whole long ass chunk of message, or you're rolling your eyes because maybe you've covered that in the previous appointment and maybe this prospect don't get it. And here's the problem. You send a long ass message to help do a handle the objection, or even to answer the question. What will tend to happen? They either ghost you, blue tick you because they need to process your message, or they have another question that they're going to ask. And then you're going to reply then. And then you're going to ask, then they're going to ask again. And then you reply. And then you know what's going to happen? At some point in time, it's going to turn up into basically a relationship argument where you're trying to like, convince your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is to do something, and it becomes a huge long ass argument back and forth, right? Which can be all done more efficiently and effectively, right? In a third appointment or in a follow-up appointment, right? Like you think about it. And we all know that if you can meet a person, like it's so much easier to talk about things, right? So it's that. Same thing with Q&A, right? And here's the thing about part C, right? Is this. The reason why I don't necessarily like, the follow-up process to be like, oh, you know what, you text someone and then you just ask them to get back to you, right? And then you follow up that kind of stuff. It's because, right, there's never a closure. And so you want to think of it as, if you ever break up with someone, what you really want to do, as much as possible, I think most people are, to be honest, depending on if you had an avoidant one, depending on if we had a breakup with the person or you're the one getting dumped, right? Is that you want to have that session or that meeting where you guys talk about how your relationship went, what didn't go well, what went well, and then, at least have a closure on like the reasons of why this isn't working out. At least there's a closure for both parties, right? There's a closure. The problem is that it's the same thing with sales, right? You want to have a closure with your prospect. You don't want it to left pending. You don't want it to be like, he this prospect and then reply you through a text, and then 3 months later still didn't reply you, and then guess what's going to happen? You're going to be like, the prospect then reply me, call also never pick up, everything also never. Then you let this lead go. That makes sense. You kind of like give out this lead. right? When in fact, right, you can just have the third appointment, and in the event that this person choose not to buy, then at least you end things off on a good note. You end things off on a good note, right? And when you end things off on a good note, which leads to my point number 2, right? First is set appointment, and in the event that you don't manage to close, you at least end things off on a good note, so that you can what? So that you can basically nurture. So that you can basically nurture them again, right? And so what I mean by that is that, so the reason why your prospects don't like to reply you, or especially when, after they didn't reply you, you try to send them what? You try to send them like, I don't know, ang bao lah, try to catch up with them lah, try to text them lah, tell them you got a single premium tranche product, whatever it is, right? The reason why they're not going to reply you, or they're not going to be like that receptive to it, right? Is because, right? Because you didn't end things off on a good note, what's going to happen is that every time your text message, hey, I don't know why my pencil isn't working, but yeah, okay. Something wrong with the pencil. But let me just turn this on and back again, right? Yeah, but basically the whole point. Now, okay, cool, we're back. So what's going to happen, right, is that if you don't end things on a good note, what tends to happen, which I put in here, right? Okay, yes, and never end things on a good note. What's going to happen, right, is that you're going to text the person, then because no response, and then what happens is that when there's no response, you send a ton of follow-up message. Yes, you send a ton of follow-up messages over a duration, right, of like months and weeks or whatever it is. And so that's what most people tend to do. But you need to understand from a prospect standpoint, no matter what you send, and the things that you send to them, right, could be follow-up on the product, it could be follow-up, it could be a new, maybe you give out this product, right? You give out this lead, and then you like send a new product or promo, or even just saying there, or even just trying to catch up. Hey, Mr. Prospect, how are you? Just want to check in. Let's say you do all these things. The problem is that it's not going to be that effective nor receptive, purely because, right, in their heads, they feel that whatever that you are doing, like whatever that you are doing here, in their heads, is that you're just trying to close them. You see? You're just trying to close them. That makes sense? And that's why it's not effective, because your prospect is okay. Like, I didn't reply this fella or this girl. Then this person tried to follow up with me, try to catch up with me, or even this person genuinely want to catch up with me, right, or buy me things, right? I know that this person is just trying to do all these things so that they can close me. You see? Can you see that's how they are thinking? Right? All because of what? All because, right, they did not have a closure. Now, so what's going to happen, right, is that when you give out on the lead, you had a closure with the lead, meaning you say that you have a closure with yourself. Sorry, you have a closure with yourself because you're like, you know what? This lead not replying me. 哎呀，应该是 cannot close already. Then guess what? Bye-bye. Right? Then you don't bother texting this person. But you understand, on the other side, did they have a closure? They didn't. So they're still going to think, they didn't have a closure that they're not going to buy or like with you in that sense, right? And so what tends to happen, there's this awkward relationship, basically. It's like, you didn't tell them anything, they didn't tell you anything, you just try to keep it awkward, keep it silent, and just pretend there's nothing happening. And so what's going to happen is that anything that you're going to send is going to be perceived as trying to close them. And if someone feels like you're trying to close them, they're not going to meet you as well. Make sense? Unless they are like, have a change in their, I don't know lah, change in lifestyle, something happened, and then, they want to buy again. Make sense? And so that's usually like the reason what happens when you don't end things off on a good note. And so when you don't, and then it's really kind of like unintentionally burning the bridge, and that's not something you want. Because if you burn the bridge with a lead, unless you really don't like this person, right? But if you burn the bridge with a lead, right, you have lesser people in the pipeline to follow up with, and that leaves your business very, very unsustainable. Okay, and so you want to nurture, right? So you end things off on a good note so they can nurture, right? And so the nurturing, this is how nurturing works, okay? And there are a few ways to do it when it comes to nurture. And let me just talk about what's the objective of nurturing, maybe more in depth in a different training. But the objective of nurturing someone, right, is just so that two things. Number one, you keep or increase the temperature of the relationship, meaning to say, keep them warm, keep them hot, right? And the reason for that is because remember if you go back up to this process, they already had an opening with you, already had a closing with you, they have like different communication and conversation with you. So to a certain degree, right, the temperature of relationship, like familiarity with you, is more or less there. It might not be the best, but it's more or less there. And so what happens, right, is that you want to keep or even increase the temperature of relationship with them. And that's the most important thing. Because if you don't and you let them go cold, what's going to happen, right? In 1 year's time, they're going to be just like another lead where you have to go from scratch again to get the prospecting, to get the opening, to get the closing. So because the relationship done cold. And this is something that fundamentally goes back to like how sales and now like nurturing is like, right? Because you can have a best friend for 10 years that could turn cold in 1 year, right? Or like it could literally turn cold in 10 years, right? For sure, if you don't ever talk to each other, right? And it's very hard. It's very hard to keep. And it's very hard, right? Basically temperature can go up and down, right? And so you really want to maintain that. So I was mentioning in the previous business hour episode, which is imagine that you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend that you only text like once every 6 months. That's the only conversation you're gonna have. One text message every 6 months. What kind of relationship do you think is really gonna be boyfriend, girlfriend anymore? You'll probably just move on, right? And so it goes back to communication, it goes back to basically maintaining a relationship in between the both of you, right? And so that's number one. Because if they are warm, they are warmer to the sale, in short, right? If they're warm, they are warmer to the sale. Right. And so that's really like the objective of like nurturing. Right. And number two, part of helping to keep the temperature warm, right? In that sense, right? There's only kind of two ways about it for the most part. Number one, right, is you want to have the relationship part, meaning say you want to socialize with them, catch up with them, so on and so forth. And then the other one is to provide value or to solve a problem that they might have or provide expertise, right? There's only these two things, right? And that's why like in our coaching journey where we coach our clients, like the relationship and value part is also known as valuationship, right? Valuationship, which is basically a play on like value and relationship, right? And so you fundamentally want to have both. And so let me tell you guys a story on the relationship, which I already told once already, right at the beginning. But let me share with you another one that literally happened to our clients, right? Which is, so this fella prospected, so use our method and use a cold LinkedIn, right? Prospected a few people. And so he met up with this guy, went through the prospecting, went did the opening and also done the closing. And what happened was that after he did the closing, I think it was a 6 or 8K kind of ILP, right? Proposed, didn't close. The person said not now, think about it, whatever, right? Basically, there's no close. And then what happened, if I draw the process, right, is this. So he prospected on LinkedIn. So he got a lead on LinkedIn, right? And then basically open. And then after he tried to close. And end up no close, right? That's the decision. And then what he did after that was, to me, it was pretty amazing, right? What he did after that, right, was that instead of trying to like just do the follow up, how are you? Can we meet again? Have you considered maybe is this the right time? Whatever. What he did was basically every month. So month one, month two, month three, all he ever did, right, was he literally just catch up, and catch up. And the catch up is like, okay, I'm nearby your place, let's have lunch or whatever it is, right? And the reason why he has able to do that, right, is because when he didn't close, there was a closure. Yeah, this rhymes, right? When you don't close the prospect, you want to have a close. You still want to close. You just not closing a product. You just want to have a closure, right? It's still a close. Okay. And so basically, when he had a closure with the prospect say, "Good, no worries. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it in the future, whatever." And then what happens, right, is that literally our client just catch up 1, 2, 3, and just a quick. It's not like a 3-hour kind of lunch kind of stuff, right? That's really too long. I think it was just like a 45-minute thing, right? Catch up, catch up, catch up. And guess what? Here's a crucial thing. When you go to catch up part, he didn't mention anything. He didn't mention anything about work. He didn't mention about like financial planning. He didn't mention about, oh, you want to look at my ILP again. Nothing. Okay, like nothing. Right? It's purely just catch up. Right? And just to put it here, I just put no work topic. Right? Yeah. Just purely catch up. Just genuinely trying to catch up with him and the other, so and so forth. And then guess what happened? What happened was that on the third appointment, the prospect bought. I'm not even kidding. The prospect was literally like, hey, the time you talk about the 8K investment plan or whatever, I think it was a PV, it's on Prudential. It's like, you talk about that. Yeah, Adri, let's go ahead with that. I thought about it. Let's go ahead with that. I thought about it. Let's go ahead with that. And that was the wildest moment. Why? Because there's really closure. And so the advisor client that we have, right? Obviously, it's not trying to close him, you're just trying to catch up. Eventually, you will close, right? But the whole objective is just to nurture a relationship, as this is what I was doing. And then the prospect brought it up himself, and then he closed. Right? End up closed. And so this is really what nurturing is all about, right? Like when it comes to the socializing catch up part, right? Most people underplay the relationship portion because to them it's a waste of time. Dude, it's never a waste of time. It's never a waste of time because the more someone interacts with you, the more they trust you, the higher the temperature, the higher the inclination of them buying. You already demonstrated your sales process, right? You already demonstrated what you have to offer. What you have not demonstrated is the relationship that you have with them or the very fact that you care. And so by doing this, what happens is you have to close the AK, right? And so if I were to ask everybody here watching this recording, is that if you catch up with this person 3 times and it's just once a month, right? And you end up closing on the third one, and it's not even, and you don't even need to initiate anything, this person just reach out, what is going to happen? Well, I mean, how do you feel? Like, is it worth it? Like 8K, 10K, is it worth it? It's probably going to be worth it, right? Because if you don't do this, then what's going to happen? Here's my thing, right? Here's the biggest objection that I usually get, which is like, "Ben, this feels like a lot of appointments," because if you think about it, it's like there's 1 appointment, there's 2 appointments, then there's 3, there's 4, there's technically 5 appointments. Make sense? Right? And then they say, "Oh, it's gonna take long, it doesn't make sense, whatever." Let me ask you a question. If you are not doing this entire process, which is to set appointment and catch up with this particular lead, what will you be doing anyways? Let's say you don't follow up, right? Let's say you don't follow up. Okay, you don't follow up. Okay, let's just erase this entire thing. Let's say you don't follow up. What are you going to do anyway? You're going to have an empty calendar, right? Agree? You're going to have empty calendar. That's number one. And when you have an empty calendar, you feel shit, and then the whole thing snowballs, right? And so what you end up doing, you still end up setting more appointments, isn't it? You still end up setting more appointments. And you know how you're going to set appointments? You're going to set appointments through this whole process, which is you start from finding a lead, trying to prospect, trying to open, trying to close, and everything else. You're still going to talk to people. You're still going to set appointments. You're still going to meet people either way, isn't it? Right? And so my point is, right, before you guys think about, okay, you know what, it's a lot of work, blah, 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 and everything else, right? Everything is work. The only question is, what are you exactly working on that will get you closer to the sale? And this is whether I have advisors like COT and everything else, like this is what they do. Literally what they do. They set an appointment, they didn't close, they set a follow-up appointment. The follow-up appointment, there's a closure, meaning to say there's no closing, but there's a closure. Then they set a next appointment. Can you see? Going back to rule number 1. Rule number 1. All right, process number 1. Always set an appointment. I really need to emphasize this. Always. You want to have a full calendar, always set an appointment, right? And so when he didn't close, he set the next appointment for the catch up. And then after the catch up, he set the next one. And then set the next one. Right? And so this was the appointment until the person ends up buying. Right? I can also tell you there were instances that the prospect didn't buy, but the prospect referred their friends to the advisor. Right? Because sometimes it's maybe you catch up with this person a lot, and then this person really has such a solid advisor, right? And they say, you know what, dude, I like you or whatever. I got some friends, I'll refer them to you. And then you get more leads from that, right? That makes sense. And so again, you're gonna set appointments anyway, right? And obviously you want to have this entire flow in place. It's not about only doing catch-ups and follow-ups only. You also want to have the inflow, right? So there's really just 2 parts here. Like if you think about it, right? There's really just the first part here, which is like new, like kind of like new leads, if you will, right? New inflow. Let's call it new inflow of appointments, right? New leads, new prospecting, new closing, new opening, new closing. And then there's this part here, which is more like the old follow-ups, right? And so you want to have both. And what's going to happen is that once you're done with this, let me tell you guys like the third kind of like process that usually happens that will make sure that your business will always be sustainable. You'll never run out of appointments, and you'll be so busy that like your next problem is just you don't have enough time and energy to manage all the appointments, right? And so there's the new inflow, there is the old, and then there's your clients, right? Where again, it's a whole different process, which I'll talk about in the future. But there's like the policy review, and then there's a catch up with them, and there's a referral that you want to get from them, so forth. Like, right? And so going back to this, right? It's like new inflow, old clients. And this just goes back to what I just talked about right at the beginning, right? Which is you can only have three types of leads, which is a client, warm, or cold leads, right? And then also like follow-ups, right? And so there you have, right? This is really a three part. And if it's not clear enough, maybe I'll just do this. Remember, part one, okay, part two, and part three, right? And so when you have this kind of process in place, your business will never run out of appointments, right? And so my point, I'm so like passionate about this because like we get so caught up with getting new leads that we've forgotten that we have a follow-up process. We've forgotten there's a client servicing process where eventually we either get more referrals or more closings, right? And so like it goes back to this at the end of the day, right? And so hopefully this gives you an idea of the nurturing when it comes to the social catch up kind of stuff, right? And then obviously with the value expertise side of things, then of course sometimes you just want to help them with problems in other parts of their financial areas, basically, right? They can help them with, right? And so in short, okay, you have them to policy review, right? And let's say after closing everything else they don't want to buy from you, can help them else with something else, right? It can be like, hey, maybe you did a BDO calculator, maybe you did a how to buy a how to afford a car calculator, or kind of like presentation or training or whatever it is that you can send to them for them to peruse, purely because of the last conversation you had, right? And so maybe the last conversation you had with them, they were wanting to buy a house, or maybe they want to have a baby. And so because they didn't buy from you, one of the things you can do is that you can come up with something, a lead magnet, right? Basically call it a calculator or whatever it is, some consolidation of links in a Google Doc or whatever, and send to them and say, here are the things I compiled for you. They'll help you make a decision to help to get a better baby. All right, not get a baby, to basically better prepare yourself to have a baby, right? For example, or better prepare yourself to buy a house, right? And so that's basically the expertise side of things. Make sense? Right? And so these are really like the two key things they want to do, which is if for right now, right? Like literally right now, all your appointments, right? If your every appointment that you have, you set the next appointment. Like this is the quickest. Like you literally will fill up your calendar. Make sense? Now, of course, people will tell me, "Hey Ben, what if they say not now, or let's say they say maybe 6 months later? Then let's say we have to catch up 3 months later, right? And they say, oh, it's a bit far out. Let's confirm again, so on and so forth, right? What you want to do is you can always set an appointment, and then you can confirm as you follow up as the date gets nearer, right? You can confirm as the date gets nearer, basically, right? And the reason for that, right, why you do that is very simple. Because let's say today was the date today. Let's say today is 26th July, right? 26th July. 26th July, and let's say you're supposed to meet 3 months later, right? I don't know what's that, August, September, let's say October, right? I think. So maybe let's just say mid 26th October. It's a bit far, right? Let's say 3 months. Now, the reason why I set an appointment, a tentative one at the very least, right, is because as the date gets nearer, what's going to happen is that all you're doing, right, is that you are confirming the appointment as opposed to setting an appointment. I repeat, when you have already set an appointment, regardless of confirm one or at least a tentative one, right, they lock in the calendar, what's going to happen is that you're confirming the appointment as the day gets nearer versus setting the appointment. And so this is it's kind of like this is already one step into the process, right? You don't have to set again. Because if you try to set, you see, the setting is easier done. You should always set an appointment during an appointment or at the end of it. You don't want to set an appointment through text. It works, but it's just a lot harder because with text, right? The thing about why people like texting or your prospect like texting versus meeting is because texting gives them the autonomy or the freedom, right, to choose when to reply or if they want to reply to begin with. And so it gives them a lot of slack and they will take very long to basically make a decision or to move forward, which is not what you want, because what if they are really not protected? You don't want them to delay on that decision, isn't it? Right? And so you just want, like, when you set an appointment, you are just confirming versus setting. Now, I tell you the psychological hack, by the way, and this will again help your business be a lot more sustainable, is that these appointments, right? What happens is that you can imagine, right? For every client, prospect, or whoever it is, you always set an appointment like months later, right? What tends to happen is that your calendar will be what? Your calendar will look full. I mean, it is full, but it will look full. And when you feel like your calendar is full or looking full at the very least, you understand that you realize you first of all you feel good. Number two, you feel like you have activities to do. You realize that okay, I realized that I have this appointment set 3 months ago on and it's happening this week. And then it's okay, I just need and then you know what you need to do, right? Because you're just confirming the appointments, just making sure they're showing up, just making sure if they are not, you can reschedule it, so on and so forth. There are things for you to do. Make sense? And so you want your calendars to look full because it gives you confidence. And like I tell you the snowball effect of this, right? Because if you feel confident, right? And I think and this is something like, when it comes to processes and systems which are important, which is what we do very well. One of the key things that we also do or talk about, right, is always about state. Because when it comes to state, right, we are all salespeople at the end of the day. And salespeople can't perform as much, right, if we are not really that inspired. Make sense? Like salespeople, like ourselves, can't perform as well if we are not as inspired. And so the state is very important. Because at the end of the day, remember that sales is also a mirror game. It's a mirror game because it's just a transfer of energy. Right? It's just a transfer of energy and beliefs. And so if you're feeling down, you're feeling like shit, and you feel like you are desperate for the sale, what will happen is that when you go for set the appointment, when you are going for the opening, going for the closing, or even the follow-ups, the prospects will feel it. And if they feel it, what are the chances of them buying? Higher or low? Going to be low. Exactly. And so my point is, this is like one of the more psychological ninja, like tactical hacks that like I can ever have when it comes to really making a business sustainable from a mind or bandwidth or mental state standpoint, right? Because even if I run through all the processes today, yada yada, and everything else, what's going to happen is that if you don't feel like doing it, you feel very tired, whatever it is, you feel dejected, yeah, you're not going to do it anyway. Nothing's going to happen, right? And so this really kind of hack, right? Obviously, you got to do the actions first, and then you feel it better, right? But that's the whole point, right? And so number one, like if your biggest takeaway here is that for every appointment that you're going for now, make it your SOP. Don't make it a point. Make it an SOP. That every appointment ends, you set an appointment. Okay? And the appointment could be to catch up. The appointment could be so it's the same thing, right? So I just want to emphasize this because this is like so important, which is if you have an opening appointment, like we are, if you have an opening appointment, you want to set a what? You want to set a closing appointment, right? If you have a closing, you want to set what? Okay, let's say you close or you fail to close, then set a follow-up, right? If let's say the follow-up requires a bit more time, then sure, you set another follow-up, right? Maybe you're closing a very big case, and those things takes a bit of time. It is what it is. But if let's say you fail to close and it's everything else, right? There's a closure, then what happens is that you want to have a catch-up, right? Or check-in, right? After the catch-up, check-in, you realize nothing happens or whatever it is, because maybe not right time, whatever. Then another catch-up and check-in again, right? And they just keep doing this. Right now, of course, the cadence differs, right? It doesn't have to be every month. You maybe do it once every quarter with this prospect, and it's fine, right? And so you want to literally have the next appointment. And so it depends on where you're at. If you're opening, of course, you go closing. If you're closing, you try to go follow up, and obviously follow up you cannot close and it requires more time. You go follow up again, so on and so forth, right? Until you get a closure. Then closure, you got to catch up. Then after that, you end up into another opening appointment eventually, and then closing. Makes sense? But eventually it goes that way, right? So it is what it is, right? And so if there's only one thing you can take away at the end of this session, which we're going to end soon, which is set an appointment. Literally set an appointment. That's the point, right? Number two, if there's anything, it's also make sure that you want to nurture them just by catching up with them. Literally just by catching up with them. That's all you need to do, right? I can tell you that, like, and this is just me, like, really just going through the trenches, doing in our own business, teaching like thousands of advisors with this. Like, these are really the things that has worked and has worked very well for them. Things that we observe from COT advisors as well. And I hope this is helpful for you as well. Okay, and so point is, we covered basically as a recap in Business Hour episode 3, is that we talk about follow-ups. And basically the whole process is that you can have leads from 3 sources, which are your clients, warm, cold, or cold, warm, or cold. And that leads will lead to prospecting, you engage them, and you go and opening, closing, and then basically if you close, it becomes a client. And if there are no close, what you want to do is follow-ups and you want to nurture. And that's what we talk about today, right? And the reasons why you want to do follow-up and nurture is because number one, they are closest to the sale. Number two, right, it removes pressure of trying to hype close in the same appointment. Number three is that these are the ones that will give you more production without trying to find and buy more leads, right? And if you never have a very good follow-up process or even any form of like legit solid follow-up process, you end up with what I call the advisor's rat race, where you think that you think the problem is with leads, but your real problems are in all the other processes, which is prospecting, opening, closing, follow-up, which are all skill sets. And just to add on this, the reason why people care a lot about the leads portion also is because if you don't have leads, if you have a small warm market, for example, it's easier to blame your lack of success on the very fact, on your circumstance, right, than actually finding responsibility within yourself. And so with leads, if you don't have leads, you say that your warm market is small, right? If you try to buy leads, because you are not the one running the ads and everything else, you're buying the leads, then you still blame other people because you say the lead quality are trash. Which I'm not saying is not true. Some of the leads are trash. There are some weirdo marketers out there, right? My point is, however, is that it's so easy to blame other people. But you realize when you are the one doing the texting, you are doing the opening, you are doing the closing, you are doing the follow-ups, right? You realize that it just sucks a lot more because it's very clear when you can't close. It's very clear when you can't open properly. It's very clear. Like the problem is with you. And I think what happens is that it's harder, it's just easier to blame other people as opposed to just trying to like learn it yourself, right? And so you guys want to learn the skill sets, right? Because once you learn the skill sets, like you never have a prospecting issue or closing issue, right? Like it's just like optimizing on these things, you know? And so that's really that. Then we also talk about basically the whole process of 2 points over here, just to keep it simple, which is number one, set an appointment. Always set an appointment, right? Because if you don't, you end up with a no reply, a reply no, and I don't know, answer questions. Which we also talk about. If any of the replies, if you think about it, right, whatever replies they give over here, just watch this. Any replies they give over here, you still need an appointment to settle it anyway, right? Let's say you want to close them, you need to meet them anyway. They no reply or they reply no, they need some they need some answers or need some questions. They have some questions, right? You still meet them anyway, right? And so you always set the next appointment for follow-ups. And then we also talk about you want to help them to make an informed decision, and an informed decision could be to buy or not buy. This is a very important attitude when you are doing follow-ups or even with sales just as a whole, because it removes all the intention of trying to close someone, trying to be desperate for the sale and getting you attached to the outcome. It prevents all of this from happening, right? And so that's really kind of like the frame, you know? And so it helps you to attach to the process because now as a salesperson, you just want to do your very best to help them make the most informed decision, that they get the right perspective, they get the right beliefs, that they get the right information before they can decide whether they want or not, right? And so you're more attached to the process as opposed to the outcome, okay? And so then we talk about nurturing as well. And nurturing, the whole point is to keep the relationship, the temperature of relationship, maintain that or increase even better, right? And there are two ways to do it. First is a social catch-up. The other one is the value expertise, which is what we call valuationship, right? In our program, we call it valuationship. And so basically it's prospecting. If you prospect, open, close, that's what most people do. Then when you have no close, after you know close, the way to do the valuationship or the catch-up portion is just really having 3 catch-ups. And usually the third one, they will want to buy. I know, sounds crazy, sounds simple. It's actually simple. It's just a little bit tedious for most people, right? But then again, if you are here on this call right now, you are listening to this recording, you are not most people. Make sense? Okay? And so never talk about work, let it bring up themselves, right? And then, of course, over here, you have your clients, which is a whole different thing, right? And so we also talk about the very fact that like how setting the next appointment help you feel better about your business and about yourself, which will help you put yourself in a better state, which will eventually get you more sales, make you more confident, and make your business a lot more sustainable. Okay, so that's the whole idea here. Thank you for watching this session. If you guys actually like the things like the trainings, everything else, please share it. Send the link of school to your friends, your colleagues. I think they're very, 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 very much appreciated. Please send it to them so that we can all learn. So that's that I hope is helpful for you, for other people as well. Share with your friends, get them in, so on and so forth, right? And also if you are today, right now, if you're like, thinking that, okay, this is good, but you want more and everything else, feel free to hop on a call or like book a call with us. And obviously if you qualify, then of course we can have a chat and everything else for this. Okay, cheers, and I will see you in the next one.